so many people wait for someone else to, this is probably good stuff to talk about. So many people wait for someone else to do things for them.
Yeah.
As opposed to going through something difficult and actually using that to build their resilience to become stronger on the other side.
Well, let's not get, I was like, save the meat, dude. Save the juice.
We're good.
Oh, okay. We're rolling.
I started rolling.
Oh, we're already
we got
rolling.
this. That's great.
Yeah, it was the juice,
Yeah,
dude.
you guys are good.
Okay. All right, everybody, welcome to the D2D Podcast. We are here at another episode. I'm actually glad to be back, your host. And why? Because anytime I bring in like a really cool guest, I'm going to be like, I'll do that one. And
I must be the really
cool you're
guest.
the really cool guest. So before, I don't even know when this comes out, but I'm telling you, a lot of cool stuff going on with the league this year. We have our sales summit in March. Recruiting and sales boot camps and business boot camps rotating monthly. We're doing 2 boot camps a month. So make sure to check out some of our live events and even potential to join virtually. So guys, thank you so much for listening though. We're going to dive into some really cool stuff because today's guest is Shaun Swarner, and he is, well, I mean, how would people explain you? Let's just say, okay, he wrote a book called Being Unstoppable. Okay, I'll just make it this way. He wrote a book called Being Unstoppable because he's climbed all 7 summits, been to the North Pole, nonprofit helps cancer people go up to Kilimanjaro, has book, like just done some really cool feats. And I'm just excited to be able to pick his brain because I mean, he's done some really things that most people, nobody else has done. You have
no one in the world.
No one else in the world.
No one in the world has done what I've done.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, he's done something that no one in the world. That's what I was like. I don't think anyone else has done it. So I'm excited to read his book, guys. Go check it out, Being Unstoppable. And he just got me a copy, so that'll be exciting. And welcome to the show, man.
Appreciate it. It's funny whenever I travel, people are like, "Well, what do you do?" That conversation always comes up. And I've been thinking about it for a long time because you're right. I'm the only person who's ever climbed Everest, the highest mountain, every continent, skied to both the North and South Poles, and completed the Hawaii Ironman Triathlon, world champion triathlon. But I did it all after surviving 2 terminal cancers. I was in a coma for a year of my life. I only have 1 lung. Like I climbed Everest with 1 lung, and I work with a lot of companies, and people ask, "Well, what do you do?" And I'm like, I don't have a title. Like most people, I'm director of marketing, I'm CEO of this, whatever it might be.
Yeah, that's why I was like, well, I don't even know what to call it. You're just doing crazy shit. That's like my vibe, dude. Like I literally have a Tagger bucket list thing because I like to just do random stuff and I invite people with me. I'm like,
it's great.
You've lived. Like that's what you do. You're like, I'm living.
Well, I thought about it. I came up with global empowerment leader.
Okay.
I was like, how does that sit with you?
I think it's just like, I'm living my best life, dude. Yeah. Like, you see what I mean? Like, no, but now obviously empower people to do the same, right? Like you public speak, you author, you do podcasts, he's going to Jamaica here in a minute to train a corporation. And that, like, obviously you're now using the wisdom and experiences and helping inspire others to do so, right. I'm assuming, right?
But not everyone's going to climb Everest.
Yes.
However, we all have an Everest to climb.
Exactly.
And that's what people don't understand.
I am climbing Everest this year, but not Mount Everest. I'm Everesting. You've heard of that?
Exactly.
I'm doing it in Jackson Hole, and I'm like, I think it's gonna be harder than I think.
It's gonna be a lot harder than you think, man. I've always wanted to do it. I need to get back on Jesse's podcast.
Yeah, dude. I'm sure they'll open up a spot for you. Like the honorary Everester, I will do the fake Everesting.
Yeah, but then what happens then if I fail on that one, but made the real one? Everybody who made the 29, the Everest one, they're gonna be like, well, I could do Everest. If this guy failed, then I can go do Everest. It can't be that difficult.
No, the elements and I'm not dealing with oxygen and altitude sickness. I have climbed Kilimanjaro, which I did get to experience people getting altitude sickness and having to throw up and puke and mental.
That's a scary thing.
I'm literally at Gilman's Point. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, been up to 24 times.
Yeah, I was like, he knows exactly what I'm talking about. I'm like, we made it. And this is good. This is actually a good story because you'll laugh. I'm like 15 years old. I'm like, why do I hike? It was the most boring thing on the planet. Like your dad's dragging you out for some like wilderness, like learning lesson or whatever to Africa. Anyway, we get to Gilman's Point and I was like, I'm not going any farther. And guys, if you're listening, it's like the top of the volcano. So it's a volcano. So it's a circle on the top.
Oh,
So
yeah, the crater rim. Yeah.
yeah. And so you're like, I made it. They're like, no, that's the top.
Right.
It's 45 minutes that way. And you're like, well, no, that looks like the same height as this. You're like, well, technically it's not the tallest point. And you're like, and it's what do they call it? Aboud's point?
Well, you get to Gilman's, and then you get to Stellar Point after that, and then you go around for another 45 minutes to
Uhuru Peak.
Uhuru, which means freedom in Swahili.
Oh, I love that. And anyway, I just remember Poli Kama Kunyonga, you know what I mean? They're just like slow like a chameleon. Anyway, so I get to the thing and I was like, I'm not going any farther. I'm done. This is it. And I just remember like my mind was playing tricks on me. And I think when you get in a hard spot, like what do you do when your mind starts to play tricks on you that close to the top? And I was like stuck to the rock. Like I was like, I am not moving. And
like, screw this, I'm done.
I am done. And luckily I had my dad that was just like, no, I am dragging you. If I had to carry you, you're not making it this far and not getting to the top. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm sure you've had moments like that. So tell us some moments in your life where you've experienced things like that.
I have. And actually a good story goes back to Kilimanjaro. As I mentioned, I've been up there 24 times now. Like I know I can make it.
Have you done the other side too?
No, I've always gone up Machame.
Okay.
You went up, I'm guessing, Umbwe or Lamosho. Probably Lamosho sounds better.
Lamosho.
Yeah.
It was like the 6 day, 4 up, 2 down kind of thing.
Yep. So you were when you were coming up, like you're looking at the crater like this, right? The mountain this way. We came up this way, you went up this way, but everybody goes, no, you went out the other way too.
Yeah, we went
most people
up
go
and
out
back.
in Weka.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But anyhow, I've taken a group up there every year for the past, I don't know how many years, like I said, 24 times up. And I've been adopted into the Chaga tribe over there. They call me Mzungu Kicha, which means crazy white man in Swahili.
I love that.
So,
did you start carrying bags for him too? You're like,
it's funny,
I'll port
dude.
my own bags.
It's so funny. Like I'll see the porter go by with my bag. I'll just grab it, stick it on my head, and start walking up.
That's awesome.
Because I've used the same guides, the same porters, the same servers, the same cooks, the same everything every year.
Cool.
So we literally are like family.
That's cool.
Right? So it's funny. They'll come and take my backpack now. I'll take
the big one.
Yeah, the big one that weighs like more than him.
Yeah.
But I have a buddy who I've known for the past, say, 20 years. I first met him coming off the mountain. His name's Richard. And he would jump on the shuttles that would run people back to town or off the mountain, right? Because you go to the gate. And he would show up with a bag full of t-shirts, like to sell them to the tourists, right? He would try to sell t-shirts to the tourists, ride down for a mile, hop off the bus, and then go back up and do that every day, right? And he saved enough money year after year after year, and he would always be there. And I'd be like, what's up? You know, how's it going? And he finally saved up enough money, and he was friends with the head guide. His name's Teo, really good friend of mine. He's adopted me into his family. So Richard saved enough money. He now owns a shop with like 4 different sections, and he employs 15 or 20 different people, like painters, carvers, artists, stuff like that. So when my wife, who's from Puerto Rico, first went up Kilimanjaro, we went to his shop. And he's like, you know, hey, thank you so much for all of the clients that you brought here. Like, here's some kickback, basically. You know, go shop. So he gave my wife this basket. She was walking around the shop, just putting all these things in there. And I'm like, babe, that's enough. And he comes up and he goes, don't stop the shemeji, which is Swahili for sister-in-law, right? It's like, don't stop the shemeji. So on the mountain, it got known every time a porter passed her, and every time, one of the hikers passed her, everyone would start screaming, you can't stop the shemeji, right? Going up the mountain. Don't stop the shemeji. So on summit night, she's sitting down. It's like 3 or 4 in the morning. Like you said, you're absolutely wasted. You're spent. Your brain is done. Physiologically, you're done. Psychologically done. Spiritually, you're done. You're just ready to check out. She sits down. It's freezing out. The sun's slowly coming up. You can start seeing a little bit of the orange and the sun coming up. And I'm like, babe, how's it going? She's like, someone stopped the shemeji, right? Clinging on a rock, just like you were. And I was thinking, who pushed you forward? Your dad.
My dad.
I grabbed her and pulled her forward. And whenever I'm feeling down, I always have somebody else to pick me up and push me forward.
Yeah.
Where you're working here, you always have a team.
Yeah.
When you're having a down day, somebody comes by, picks you up and says, hey, let's go. And it might be tough love. Some people need that. Hey, stop feeling sorry for yourself. Get over it. It's just a bunch of shit you're feeling right now. Tough. Tough titties. Get over it. Move on.
Yeah.
Sometimes people need that love and caring. Hey, it's okay. People have downtime. And then a lot of people, I think most people, have to be reminded of why they're actually doing it. Like, why do you want to reach that summit? So for her, every day, she actually, like, this day was dedicated to her 95-year-old grandma. This day was dedicated to her mom, right? This day was dedicated to her brother and so forth. And then the last night, I was like, who are you dedicating this and the summit to? She's like, me.
This one's for me.
This one's for me. So you have to find a deeper purpose for why you want to reach the summit. Because once you reach that goal, there's going to be something else you want to accomplish.
I love that. And everybody always says start with the why. I love saying start with the who.
Yeah.
When it's like, I dedicate this day, and just one day at a time too.
That's
like,
it.
Cause like when you're hiking something like that, like there are longer some days and you're just like, this sucks. Other than the acclimation day, you're just like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
But like, you're like, I'm dedicating this to them and in honor of them. And I think in the history of like, you go to like medieval times and things like that, it's like they were so good at like, or like the Japanese or the Asian cultures, like they're so good at like honor. I'm going to bring honor to my family.
Absolutely.
I feel like we fail to do that sometimes. Like if you're like, I'm dedicating this to my grandma in honor of her, and then you suck and you like quit out and then you just have a bad attitude. It's like, wow, like what lack of honor are you now bringing? What a cool motivator.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Because there's a deeper purpose behind it.
Yeah.
And most people are like, I just want to check it off. But you check it off, great. You have a list of 10 things you've done, but you haven't really experienced anything. It's like so many people are alive, but they're not living. They're doing things, but they're not present, remembering and experiencing those moments.
And I've found myself there so much.
Everybody has.
And I noticed it was like when I was with my kids, like imagine that you're with your kids, but are you with your kids?
Absolutely.
Are you experiencing your kids or are you just like being there?
The greatest present is your presence.
Yeah. But not just physical presence. It's
right.
I think that's where I think a lot of people even get off is they're like, I'm here on vacation, but I'm still working, or I'm with my date, but I'm not really with my date mentally, or I'm, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, exactly. It's like, And I literally wrote, like I have this tattoo, it says now.
I like that.
Because it's just like, what time is it? It's now. And it's like that practice of just saying, how do I find that presence? And that's what really drives deeper purpose a lot of times. Because I think what people lose purpose and motivation sometimes, I think, is a lack of presence. So talk to me kind of on that. Like, it's kind of an interesting loop.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because going back to Kilimanjaro now, people always ask me, how much further? How long until we stop? My answer, I don't care where we are, 5 more minutes. It doesn't take them long to realize, they're going to stop asking. Shit, he keeps giving me the same answer. But if you can do 5 minutes, you can do 5 more. You can do 5 more. You can now be here now again. So many people are so focused on the future, this, that, the other thing. That's where anxiety comes from. And so many people who are worried about the past, that's where depression comes in. But if you're living in the now, you're in the present, you got 5 more minutes, great. Get through the 5 more minutes and then do 5 more. That's it. And one of the things that opened my eyes, I was friends with the guy, I still am. He was an alcoholic. I guess he still is, technically speaking. His first AA meeting he went to, the guy gets up and he goes, my name is whatever. I've been sober for 27 years. His first thought was, holy shit, I have to be sober for 27 years? It's like, no, you just have to be sober today. You just have to do your best today. Tomorrow, do your best tomorrow. When it gets here, just put in your effort then.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science. But so many people lose focus of it because they have these grandiose goals. But when I climbed Everest, when you climb Kilimanjaro, when you climb any big mountain, when you have any big giant goal you want to reach, you don't show up at base camp and magically show up at the top. You put in the time and the effort getting there. And if you think about this blew my mind. I was on Everest, which I'm sure we'll get to. I got to base camp April 8th, summited May 16th. I was on the summit for 20, 30 minutes, which is a fraction of the time that I was actually on the mountain. So many people are so focused and laser dialed into the goal, which is great. But you spend how much time actually there? And how much more time, exponentially more time do you spend trying to reach that goal? I learned so much more about myself in the process than I do at the end.
Yeah. Because then once you get to the top, you're like, I did it.
Yeah, and then you have to go back down. You're only halfway.
You're like, then I go back down, which is probably scary too, just trying to come down.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you're like, I got to get off this mountain. And then what?
Yeah. And then what?
You're like, I just climbed the tallest mountain in the world. What do I need to do? Like slingshot myself to Mars? Like there's nowhere else to go. Yeah. You're like, and then what? And I think there's this element of, I call it the success void of like, you thought the heavens are going to open up once you achieve this goal, and everybody's going to be like, oh, now he's the man. It's like, cool, you did it. Then what?
Great. Now what? And that's what people always ask me too. They're like, well, you accomplished this. Now what? I'm like, well, that's not enough. Like, no, you have to keep going.
Yeah, you have to keep going. What's been your favorite mountain you've climbed?
Kilimanjaro. Yeah, just because of the people, the culture. You know, I was adopted into the Chugga tribe. I have friends who are Maasai. I love taking people over there for a number of reasons, but a big one is it's similar to, say, Christmas. You know, I don't need anything. I don't need presents. I don't want people spending money on me to give me something I probably don't need anyhow. It's nice, great thought. But I love giving gifts to my nieces and nephews. I can't have kids. My wife and I can't have kids because of the medicine, everything I went through. But I love giving gifts to, you know, my 8-year-old niece and seeing her face light up. It's a similar feeling when I get to the top of Kilimanjaro and I turn around with my camera, because I'm always the first one up there. I turn around with my camera and get a footage of them coming up. And when they reach the summit, in an instant, their lives change. I can see the pain disappear. I can see the anxiety disappear. I can see the worry disappear. I can see the confidence growing in. And in that moment, their life changes immediately, and I can see it in their faces. That's what I enjoy most about Kilimanjaro. The transition of going through their oh shit moment, looking at the glaciers on the top, thinking they're clouds, and then making it to the summit. Yeah.
So skied the North Pole? Are there mountains there?
No, we were on cross-country skis with skins, and we pulled a giant sled past polar bear tracks, and we had a couple polar bears chasing us. So to answer your question, no, but there are... What's crazy about the North Pole is...
Santa's not up there?
No, he had his cloaking device on. I didn't see him. So going up to the Antarctica is a continent, right? So underneath all that ice is land. The North Pole is just a bunch of giant frozen chunks of water. So it's very similar to a glass of water. You have ice floating on top, right? Just think on a massive scale. And what happens is, because they're constantly moving, because of the currents, and there are currents underneath, so they'll break up the ice, and you can hear it constantly shifting and cracking. And there are a couple times we were skiing where it was like recently frozen slushy material, right? It's like spring skiing. Just put it on top of ice and you're going to crash through. But also what was insane was that when we moved forward one day, we covered 5 miles, the water, the current underneath the ice was flowing against us. So while we were sleeping, we floated 3 miles backwards.
No way.
Yeah. So we woke up, checked the GPS. We're like, we're 3 miles away from where we went to sleep.
How many days did it take?
I think it took us about 10 days.
10 days skiing, cross-country skiing, pulling a sled.
Yeah. And a lot of people are like, oh, do you do the ice bath? Do you do this? Like, no, you can hop in the ice bath and go get warm. Like, I'm out here in 80 below temperatures and I have to go back to a tent that I don't have a long extension cord.
Yeah.
To plug in a heater.
It's 80 below.
It got to 80 below.
How cold was it on top of Everest?
That's a great question. I would guess minus 30.
Okay. So it's colder up at the North Pole. Like, you're just like...
Oh, yeah. And because there's so much humidity, the issue is when you're moving forward, excuse me, when you're moving forward, you have to really pay attention to your body temperature. Because if you don't and you sweat, literally if you sweat, you die. Like, that's just a blunt way of putting it. because your body will freeze with that sweat clinging to your body. So you have to pay attention. But when you stop, then you have to put on a down jacket, stop and eat. But one of the issues I remember having was the poles that we had when we were moving. We essentially taped this shell for your glove, your hand to go into, onto the pole. Right, so it went up and over and taped it so that way there'd be no air coming in underneath. And every time you would stop, you take your hand out, you'd sit down, with gloves on, mittens on, put them under your armpits to keep your fingers from falling off, eat your food, and then you go back to those mittens that were sitting there. And now the inside is covered in ice because of the moisture from your hands. So you're putting your hands back into literally 2 freezers. And for the first 30 minutes, you're walking and just trying to shoot blood down to your fingers so your fingers don't freeze off. And then finally, when they start warming up, they warm up and then they start sweating. The moisture comes off, your hand goes on the inside of the glove again. And then by the time your fingers warm up, you're stopping again to fuel and rehydrate.
There's no like hand warmer system.
But it doesn't, there are, yeah, but that warms up so much, then it makes your hands start to sweat. But then when you take your hand out, that freezes, and hand warmers don't really work that well on Kilimanjaro or Everest because it's an oxygen, it's a reaction with the charcoal and the chemicals in there with the oxygen. Less oxygen, less heat.
Wow. So do you feel like the elements make it harder or the physical exertion makes it harder?
I think the mental approach you have to those physical attributes make it the most difficult.
Yeah, because 10 days in that with no like, okay, calling it quits. Let's go hop in the hot tub real quick. You know what I mean? Like after a nice day of skiing when it's freezing, I have a hot tub in my backyard. I can go jump in. And for that, you're like, we are on a floating sheet of ice.
Yeah.
How many were there?
There were 6 of us.
Do you have dogs or anything?
Had to be evacuated. No, it was just us.
So we had to be evacuated.
So our doctor had to be evacuated.
So you're like, now we have no medicine, dude.
Exactly. What the hell do we do now? The helicopter came in, picked her up, took her off, and the creepy thing is, like, when you're on a giant chunk of ice where you can't hear the ridges moving against other ones, when that helicopter takes off, it's silent.
That's weird.
Like, the only thing you hear are the voices in your head, either telling you to go or stop or I'm cold or meditate. And I also had my sat phone where people could send questions. And I'm just kind of just throwing things against the wall now because we're all over the place. But I just remembered there was an elementary school class where they were sending riddles and questions. And one question I remember that I never thought about was, what does it smell like up there? There's no pollen. You don't smell flowers. There's no exhaust. You don't smell cars. You smell fuel when you're filling up the stove, but like there are no smells.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Okay, so what drove you to do this? Like what fueled you to want to go on all these adventures? And then obviously it takes time. Like it's not like you can just be a normal 9-to-5 job. Like
right.
What did you do as occupation? Did you get all sponsors? Like how did you fuel this passion of yours?
Great question. That goes back to grad school. Actually, it goes back even further than that. It goes back to when I was 13 and 17. So my teen years, I was fighting cancer.
Which we have Lance Armstrong this weekend coming to Door Door Con if you want to come watch. Saturday.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's he doing?
He's speaking at our event.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, so I was like, well, kind of another Lance Armstrong-esque type fuel. So
now it's kind of funny. I've sent him a number of messages like, I know you excel in the mountains with 2 wheels underneath your leg. Let's see what happens if you remove those things.
That's awesome.
Yeah, tell him I said hi. So going through the 2 cancers, I was given 3 months to live the first time at 13 years old. I gained 60, 70 pounds. I lost my life, really. Placed in remission after a year and a half, going in for checkup for the first cancer. They found a second cancer unrelated to the first cancer. And this time around, they gave me 14 days to live. And I was read my last rites. I was in a medically induced coma for a year. and I only have one functioning lung because of the radiation. And because no one's ever had Hodgkin's and Askin sarcoma before, I'm the only person in history who's ever had those 2 cancers. The chances of me surviving both those diseases are equivalent to winning the lottery 4 times in a row with the same numbers. It's impossible. So my teen years were taken from me. My perspective on life was changed because of it. So imagine, let's go back in time to, let's say, when you're in the 8th grade or in high school. You're getting ready for school. You're worried about what? Like, what's your mind on?
Yeah, just like girls.
Yeah.
And
like, where are you going to sit at lunch?
Yeah, like sports maybe.
Yeah.
Like,
so now imagine you're terrified day in, day out for years. You are terrified to close your eyes at night because you don't know if you're going to wake up the next day.
wow.
Those things don't even matter. So I remember the 1 month of radiation I had, which was kind of like a moment of clarity that alcoholics have, because they knocked me out 3 months before the radiation and 10 months after. So it destroyed my life, but I used it to develop a different perspective and build resilience out of it. So I know what true pain really is. And utilizing that, I went to college, studied psychology, went and took my master's. I went to work for my master's and my doctorate in psycho-oncology, but I couldn't help others until I helped myself. And then that's when I decided I wanted to utilize Everest as a platform to give other people hope. And I was living in Florida at the time, and the highest point's the top of the Four Seasons Hotel in Miami. Like, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
So then I moved to Colorado, Estes Park, Colorado. And the biggest peak around me at the time was Long's Peak. It was 18 miles round trip to 14,256 feet, which I did once a week with 100 pounds of rocks in my backpack.
Really?
Just to get myself in shape. But I didn't just show up at the mountain with 100 pounds of rocks, day one, and maybe 30 pounds. The next time I went up, maybe 35 pounds, and slowly worked my way up to that. And I would go up in bad weather, knowing that a bad weather day in the Rockies was probably better than a good weather day in the Himalayas. But I did it to give people hope, to let people know, hey, there is hope out there. And if some guy who's a 1 lung, 2 times surviving lunatic with these crazy notions in his head that he can accomplish some things that people thought were physiologically impossible, if he can go do that, then anything can happen. So many people need to see something's possible before they go do it themselves. Whereas I'm the opposite. I believe it's possible, and I'll go find a way to make it happen.
Which I think is such an important mindset to adopt. I watch salespeople, business owners, like they're almost like copying instead of saying, how do I innovate? How do I say, I haven't seen it before. That's what excites me about this, instead of, as long as everybody else is doing it, I'm okay to do it. Which I'm like, real leadership is saying, where's the vision that is yet to be discovered, right? Like, where's the opportunities that make this interesting for innovation and new exploration and pioneering, kind of that. And that's where I see growth. That's what's fun. Like, vicarious experience is always a good motivator, because obviously it can be done. Like, somebody's done it. But I like to explore. I'm on your side. I'm like, well, what's nobody doing?
Yeah, like, what's on the other side over there?
Yeah.
But I wonder why so many other people don't do that. And I think it's because they're terrified of what they might find on the other side.
Yeah.
Going up Kilimanjaro as many times as I have, I don't call it an expedition anymore. I call it an inspedition. Because anybody who thinks they're going to show up and conquer the mountain, they're sorely mistaken. I mean, if it's you versus Mother Nature, she'll beat you down every single time. You're never going to win that battle. And you never conquer the mountain, but you learn to conquer yourself.
Yeah.
You learn to conquer those fears. So it's an inspedition because it's an inward journey through an outward adventure.
Love that. And I think the cool element of self-inflicting negative 80-degree weather, it's like you chose to be up there. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not like nobody put you in prison and was like, you're going to be forced to go to the North Pole. It's like, I think people complain so much about you chose door to door. You chose to get rejected. You chose to be an entrepreneur. You chose for the roller coaster. The economy could beat you down. Weather could beat you down. Customer could beat you down. A lawsuit could beat you down, whatever it is. But I'm over here like, that's like the cool part about the introspection. Like you said that, what do you call it? An
inspedition.
Inspedition.
Yeah, instead of an expedition.
Yeah, an inspedition. I swear, like that's a good word, an inspedition. And having that like tenacity and that like dialect and interconversation doesn't happen enough, in my opinion. Like in today's society of this, like almost everything's so convenient, everything is so accessible, snap of your finger, right. Food's there, now they're like delivering it to you. It's like we don't have to go through interdialect conversations, and people are avoiding it through just watching Netflix, zoning out and clocking out at their job and being like, I'm glad I have this job. And I'm like, I look at some of my employees and I'm like, you're just existing. Like if I lost you, I don't think anything would change. And I'm like, and that to me would scare me. Like if I was an employee or I was in a culture or I was contributing to society and a leader was like, nothing would change the impact of your
gone.
Yeah, if you're gone. Like that is my biggest fear. Like, and it's like, I want to have like, I literally, to this week is crazy. We have 3,000 people coming to our event this weekend. Like I have an event tomorrow, the next day, the next day, the next day, and the next day. Like
that's awesome.
Every this week, like is nuts. And I like to wake up in the morning and just like, all right, what's going to go wrong? Like
right.
When am I going to have to just start bitching at somebody and like audible call some friend and be like, bro, can I remember like the first year I got to pay for the VIP dinner. It was like 15 grand or something. And my credit card declines. I was like, hey, can I had to look at a client and be like, hey, can I borrow your card? Like, I didn't think like, oh, it's maxed out. You know what I mean? Like just random shit will always go down. And I like love that part of like, all right, I got to figure this out. Cause everybody's like, Sam, we got to still pay for dinner. Like you have a check.
With that many people can't dine and dash.
Yeah. You can't just like peace. It's at Roost Chris, bro. You're not dining and dashing. And like, so I just was like, oh, I got to figure this out. Like, and that element of like, that's why I was like curious about the glove or like something crazy. Like I was like, oh, hand warmers, but you're like, yeah, but then you sweat and it's just like even worse. And I'm like, so what is the solution? Because my hands get cold skiing in different, like right here, bro. Like I have bad circulation. I'm asking for personal purpose because I'm like, how do I get to do that? I have this bucket list mastermind, and anybody that's listening to this, like inquiry about what's our next trip, like we're taking, we booked 50 of 100 rooms on a yacht in Mediterranean in May. We just take high vibe people. We went heli skiing last year, South Africa safari last year. Like, we just do cool things with cool people. And sometimes I'm like limiting my cool people because I'm like, yeah, like that's easy. But my adventure is much more like, let's go to the North Pole or let's go to base camp. Like,
let's take people up to Kilimanjaro.
Yeah, let's take people. That's actually, I would love that. Like, that's more my style, but I'm like limiting because I'm watching some obese, I'm watching some older, I'm watching some people that are like, well, I can't. I'm like, I can. Yeah, I was like, that's your own fault, bro. Like he had a cancer and he could, like he was about to die. I don't know. He did it. You know what I mean? But like, why don't you start working out? Like I'm excited about this Jackson Hole Everesting thing, but I'm like, everybody's like, oh, I want to do that. I'm like, I don't want to like walk with you though. Like I'm going to do it probably faster than you. Like anyway. So I think sometimes we limit our own experiences because of our surroundings and our own fear of being the dude that went once a week 18 miles by himself with 18 pounds. I guarantee you didn't have people like hanging with you. He just did it. To me, that's like a true 1099 entrepreneur leader, is somebody that's not waiting for his wife to be like, hey, you're going to go hike these 18 miles this week again with me at the 100 pounds in your bag? I'm sure she went a few times. I'm sure she'd like.
I didn't have a wife.
Oh, okay.
There's probably a reason.
He's not calling his buddy and being like, hey, like, there are times where you've got to be alone on the mountain. And I think a lot of people aren't willing to just have those.
And it's rejuvenating.
Yeah.
Doing that.
I love it. I live on Bell's Canyon. Like my backyard is a trail. And I'm like, see ya.
That's great.
Our dilemma is like, who stays home with the kids? Like that's our biggest issue is like, we both want to do, I have a 9-7-7-4. So I'm like, they're kind of getting to the age where I'm like, see ya. Yeah. I'm like, or they'll come. And anyway, my wife, she's like the most adventure buddy too. So it's like a powder day. It's like, all right, whose turn is it? Not like, traditionally where you're like, oh, I don't want to go ski. Like that was how my last one was. It was like, now I'm like, I want to do everything together. So it's fun. It's fun. So any other advice like for our audience that when it comes to mindset, when it comes to doing hard things, when it comes to chasing and living, any other message that you'd want to share?
I kind of want to go back to what you were talking about with the issues that come into play, right? When I wake up in the morning, when I go on these expeditions, when I go up Kilimanjaro, when I go to the North Pole, I picture in my mind all the things that could potentially go wrong. I don't dwell on them, I don't focus on them, because they're going to drag me down. I'm like, shit, I don't want to go out there today. Like, the world's a scary place, right? There's so many things that could go wrong. But the big things in my mind, I picture, okay, I could potentially fall into a crevasse. At the North Pole, on Everest, at the North Pole, I might fall into an open lead, which is like when you're crossing an open lead, which is an open section of ice where it splits open, right? And the water is so cold and deep, it looks like oil, right? It's so thick. And I'm thinking to myself, well, this might happen. High probability of it happening. Hopefully it won't. But I come up with creative solutions and I deal with it before it happens. So Denali, when I climbed the highest mountain in North America, somebody fell in a crevasse. And it's not like, oh shit, what do I do? I knew exactly what to do in that situation because I've rehearsed it so many times in my head. Do this, 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 and this. But I also practiced setting up a Z line and the ropes and stuff to pull them out physically. But I wonder if at an event like that, every time somebody opens their eyes in the morning, I think about this too. I focus on all the things I want. Those are what would have drawn me towards the goals, right? But I'm also looking at the things that might potentially become an obstacle or get in my way. And in my mind, I deal with them before they actually happen. And I think that helps a lot. But going back to when I was 13, on my hands and knees, 60 pounds overweight, bald from head to toe on the shower floor, sobbing my eyes out, pulling chunks of hair out of the drain so the water could go down. And I wasn't focused on not dying, I was focused on living. So going through these cancers and everything that I've experienced in my life have taught me life lessons that really relate back to the real world.
Yeah.
So focus on what you want, not the avoidance of what you don't. Know it's there, but don't spend that much time and attention.
Yeah. Love that. This is so good. I could talk for, I'm sure there's so many stories and like, I'm thinking just like, there's so much we could unpack. Guys, if you don't already, go follow Shaun and, go get his book. I'm sure there's some awesome, like deeper stories.
A lot of good ones in there.
Yeah. Like there's a lot to unpack. Anybody that's willing to put themselves through such, Stairmasters, would definitely, that's what I call it, the ultimate Stairmaster right. King, of just like gruesome, hard elements and surviving cancers. Like it's just cool. I honor and respect that. Like I really do. And it's inspiring me. Like it was good and divine that this happened today. Cause I was like, man, I'm going to do a podcast and everything's going on this week. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And it's just like motivating to me of like, yeah, what is my hard? You know what I mean? Like everybody has a different hard. And I'm like, yeah, it's not that bad. Like when you really put it in perspective, it's like, and then focusing on what I do want, like I'm motivated off of this, guys. Like if you aren't, you're an idiot. So hopefully you got some value out of this. Go like and subscribe. Go share this with somebody maybe is a little bit in need of some pump me up. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Thanks so much for being on, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Much love. See you guys.